Song Yiren gets sentence reduced after revealing horrifying truth about YuMenglong's death. The echoes of YuMenglong's tragedy still rumble across China, each courtroom hearing drawing crowds bigger than the last. But what unfolded today in a tightly packed chamber sent shockwaves far beyond the walls of justice. Song Yiren, the woman once painted as a cold conspirator, stepped forward to reveal a chilling truth, one that changed the direction of the entire case and left millions gasping for air. Her words didn't just reduce her sentence. They redefined the story of YuMenglong's death in ways the public had never imagined. A courtroom charged with tension. The courtroom overflowed with journalists, fans, and ordinary citizens who had traveled hours just to glimpse the moment. Every seat was taken, every standing space crammed. Outside, massive screens live-streamed the proceedings for thousands holding flowers, candles, and posters demanding justice for YuMenglong. Song Yiren was escorted in, wrists chained, her usually glamorous image shattered into one of fragility and despair. Dressed in plain gray prison attire, she looked small, broken, and almost unrecognizable compared to the star the nation once adored. Her head remained bowed until the judge called her name. When she finally lifted her face, everyone noticed the streaks of tears carving paths down her cheeks. The prosecutor's voice thundered. The defendant stands accused of aiding and abetting the crime, misleading investigators, and obstructing justice. Today, she seeks mercy from the court. On what grounds, Miss Song? A pause followed. The air seemed frozen, hearts pounding in unison. Song Yiren drew a shaky breath, then spoke in a voice so trembling yet piercing that the room seemed to shrink around her. Because I have been carrying a truth so dark, so horrifying, that silence has eaten me alive. And today, I cannot die with it still inside me. The shocking revelation. Every eye fixed on her as the cameras zoomed closer, capturing the tremor in her lips. I was there the night YuMenglong was taken. I wasn't the mastermind, no. But I knew what Gao Taiyu was planning. And worse, I knew why. You had uncovered something so devastating that if it had come out, not just Gao's career, but powerful people behind him would have fallen like dominoes. The words hung heavy in the air. Reporters typed frantically. Flashes lit up the room, and whispers spread like wildfire. You discovered financial fraud and blackmail within our industry. Documents, proof, recordings. Gao wasn't acting alone. There were others. Men in high places. People whose names you scream for at award shows, whose movies you line up to see. You was ready to expose them, and they panicked. Gao was pushed to silence him. I was told to watch, to keep quiet, to make sure the story never reached daylight. The gallery erupted, some gasping, others shouting in fury. The judge banged the gavel repeatedly, demanding silence. But Song Yiren wasn't done. Her body shook as she screamed through her tears. Yes, I stayed silent, and that was my crime. But I was never his killer. I was a coward drowning in fear, trapped by threats that if I spoke, I would be next. Gao wasn't the only monster. He was a pawn of something bigger, something darker, and YuMenglong died because he was too brave to stay quiet. The court in chaos. YuMenglong's mother collapsed against her daughter-in-law, sobbing uncontrollably. He knew my boy knew, and they killed him for it. Her wails pierced through the courtroom, infecting everyone with her grief. Outside, the live stream carried Song Yiren's confession into the streets. People screamed in disbelief. Some fainted, and others dropped to their knees, clutching candles tighter. Within minutes, the internet exploded. Hashtags trending worldwide. Hashtag Song Yiren confession. Hashtag justice for YuMenglong. Hashtag expose the industry secrets. Inside the chamber, chaos reigned. The prosecutor's face turned pale. The defense attorney seized the moment, hammering home that her silence, while cowardly, was not the same as murder. The judge's struggle. The judge, a man of decades of service, leaned back in his chair, visibly shaken. Never before had he presided over a case that threatened to unravel not just one crime but an entire empire of corruption. He whispered something to his clerks before raising his voice. Order. This court will not tolerate hysteria. The defendant's claims will be verified through evidence and proper investigation. But given her cooperation and her role in exposing a broader conspiracy, the court recognizes mitigating circumstances in her sentencing. A hush fell. The gavel struck. Song Yiren's sentence will be reduced from 20 years to 8 years in prison, with the possibility of parole after 5. The public's mixed reaction. The announcement sent the courtroom into frenzy. Some erupted in outrage. Too light. She's guilty. Others nodded, murmuring, "At least she spoke the truth." YuMenglong's fans outside were divided. Some smashed candles to the ground in fury, screaming that justice had been diluted. Others held their candles higher, whispering prayers of gratitude that at least part of the truth had finally surfaced. Social media became a battlefield. Millions debated, was she a coward redeemed, or a conspirator escaping full justice? One viral comment read, "If not for her confession, we'd never know the scale of this darkness. Hate her if you want, but today she cracked the wall." The emotional breakdown. As guards approached to lead her away, Song Yiren collapsed to her knees in the dock. She clasped her hands together and cried out toward YuMenglong's family. "I am sorry. I was weak, I failed him, I failed you. But I swear on my life, I will spend every breath left exposing the men who made Gao do this. You deserves truth, not just vengeance." The family didn't respond, grief too raw, pain too blinding. His mother clutched her son's framed photo tighter, tears streaming endlessly down her face. The guards lifted Song Yiren by force. Her cries echoed down the hallway as she disappeared behind the heavy steel doors. Aftermath. A nation trembles. The revelation was like an earthquake across China. Investigative journalists scrambled to chase leads about the unnamed, powerful figures she hinted at. Celebrities across the industry rushed to release statements, distancing themselves from the storm. Sponsors withdrew endorsements from stars, with even the faintest ties to Gao or Song. In Urumqi, YuMenglong's hometown, thousands gathered for another candlelight vigil, chanting his name into the night. Some fans wrote messages on paper lanterns and released them into the sky. "We believe you. The truth will rise with you." A seed of doubt. But beneath the collective outrage lay a seed of doubt. Was Song Yiren telling the full truth, or saving herself with half-confessions? Was she pointing to invisible enemies, or had she genuinely cracked open the biggest scandal in entertainment history? The judge ordered a full reinvestigation into her claims. Subpoenas would soon fly, bank accounts would be traced, and more names might tumble down. The tragedy of YuMenglong had transformed into something bigger, a battle not just for justice, but for the cleansing of an industry drenched in secrets. Conclusion. Justice still out of reach. As the courtroom emptied, only the echoes of grief remained. The truth had taken another unexpected twist. Song Yiren walked away with a reduced sentence, but her haunting revelation left scars deeper than before. For YuMenglong's fans, the nightmare continued. His death was no longer just a story of jealousy or betrayal. It was a war against corruption, power, and silence. And as the mother of YuMenglong whispered through her tears while leaving the courtroom, "He died fighting for truth. And until truth wins, my son will never truly rest." The confession that stopped the courtroom cold. The silence in the courtroom was so dense it seemed to throb like a heartbeat. Reporters froze with their pens hovering in midair, cameras zoomed in, and even the armed guards along the walls tilted forward, stunned. Song Yiren's words weren't just testimony. They were a blade, slicing into the very heart of a case already drenched in grief and suspicion. The judge leaned forward, his glasses catching the harsh fluorescent light. His eyes narrowed on the trembling woman before him, her shackled hands quivering as she clutched the edge of the wooden dock. "Repeat that," he demanded, his voice low but cutting. "The court needs absolute clarity." Song Yiren's lips trembled. She shut her eyes, tears spilling freely now, then lifted her face toward the bench. Her voice broke, but the words were clear enough to pierce the thickest fog. It wasn't just Gao Taiyu. He wasn't acting alone. YuMenglong uncovered proof, documents, recordings about corruption at the very top. People more powerful than any of us. They ordered him silenced. Gao only carried it out, and I was told to stay quiet. If I opened my mouth, I would be next. The chamber erupted instantly. Fans of YuMenglong, who had come dressed in white as a tribute, shot to their feet, some shouting, others weeping. One woman collapsed into the aisle, clutching a framed photo of the late actor, sobbing, "He was protecting us, and they killed him for it." The judge slammed the gavel over and over, but the noise would not settle. At the prosecution's table, the lead attorney's face drained of color. He had walked into court expecting a straightforward plea for leniency, but this was an explosion that threatened to turn the trial on its head. His papers shook in his hands as he hissed at his assistant, "Get her statements verified. Now. Call for cross-examination." A nation holding its breath. The confession traveled through the live stream like wildfire. Outside the courthouse, thousands who had gathered to watch on giant screens gasped in unison. Some clutched each other's arms, while others covered their mouths in disbelief. A ripple spread through the crowd as words echoed from phone to phone. "She says he was killed because he knew too much. She says Gao wasn't alone." The chant of "Justice for YuMenglong" swelled louder, shaking the very barricades. Police officers struggled to hold the lines as people pushed forward, desperate to know more, desperate to see the faces of those Song Yiren had dared to accuse, even without names. On social media, hashtags exploded within seconds. Hashtag Song Yiren confession. Hashtag expose the hidden hands. Hashtag YuMenglong died for truth. Millions tuned in across the world, turning their screens into portals of rage and heartbreak. The human reactions inside. YuMenglong's mother sat frozen for a long moment before the words sank in. Her hands, clutching the photo of her son, began to shake violently. Then came a cry so guttural and raw it silenced even the loudest voices in the chamber. "He knew, my boy knew, they killed him because he was brave." Her husband wrapped his arms around her, but his own shoulders shook as tears streamed silently down his face. On the other side, Su Kai was trembling uncontrollably. His fists pounded against the wooden railing in front of him, his voice breaking as he shouted, "He died protecting the truth. You monsters hid this from us all along." Tan Songyun, beside him, couldn't stop crying. Her head bowed low, but her sobs echoed, her body shaking as she whispered, "You." At the defense table, Song Yiren herself was almost collapsing. She wasn't standing tall as someone seeking mercy. She was crumbling, falling apart before their eyes. The weight of months of silence bore down on her shoulders, and her knees buckled. The guards tried to hold her upright, but she pressed her forehead to the wood of the dock, sobbing so loudly her words were almost indistinguishable. "I didn't kill him. I swear I didn't kill him. But I was there. I saw the fear in his eyes that night. And I stayed silent. I let them threaten me into silence. Forgive me, you." The judge's dilemma. The judge removed his glasses and pressed his palm against his forehead. He had presided over murders, betrayals, and scandals in his career, but never had he felt a case unravel in his hands like this one. "Miss Song," he said firmly, regaining composure, "you are making grave accusations. This court cannot act on words alone. Do you have proof of these claims?" Song Yiren lifted her tear-streaked face, her eyes red but unflinching now. "Yes. There are files. Gao showed me once, to scare me into silence. He said if YuMenglong released them, all of us would burn. He threatened me with those files every day. I know where he kept them." The courtroom gasped again. The prosecutor scrambled to request immediate seizure orders, already typing furiously on his tablet. A nation's outrage. As the revelation spread, the nation reacted in waves of fury and heartbreak. Across Beijing, Shanghai, Chengdu, and beyond, fans of YuMenglong rushed to city squares, holding vigils. In Urumqi, his hometown, lanterns were lit and released into the night sky, each carrying messages written in trembling hands. "You died for truth. We will not let them bury it." Some fans screamed that Song Yiren's sentence should not be reduced, branding her a coward who had betrayed her friend. Others argued that her confession had cracked the walls of secrecy, that without her words the deeper corruption would never have surfaced. The country was torn in half, united only by grief and outrage. A family's agony. Back in the courtroom, YuMenglong's mother rose to her feet, her frail body trembling with every step as she pointed a shaking finger towards Song Yiren. You watched my son die. You stayed silent while they killed him. You call yourself a victim. No. You chose yourself over him. My boy was brave. You were a coward. The chamber fell silent, every eye fixed on the devastated woman. Song Yiren broke again, collapsing fully to the ground in her shackles, weeping uncontrollably. I know. I will never forgive myself. But please believe me when I say his fight is not over. If I have to rot in a cell, I will still scream his truth until the world hears it. Her words echoed, lingering in the air long after the guards dragged her from the room. The weight of a confession. As the courtroom adjourned, people left in waves, some sobbing, some furious, some in stunned silence. Reporters stormed outside, microphones raised, ready to deliver headlines that would ripple across the globe. The truth had shifted. The death of YuMenglong was no longer a crime of jealousy or ambition. It was now painted as part of a far larger web of corruption, secrets, and power. And though Song Yiren's sentence was reduced, the shadow of her confession promised something more terrifying. This was only the beginning.